warm welcome to the Silicon Valley Business Intelligence, and today I have a very special guest who I am delighted to introduce to you, entrepreneur, inventor, developer, Mr. Jack McCauley. Mr. Jack, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate you spending time with me.
Thank you for coming to the show. I appreciate your time as well. Mr. McCauley, you've been in business for a few decades. You've been in game development in around 3 decades. Mm-hmm. You're a co-founder of Oculus. Mm-hmm. You founded Guitar Hero.
I was a head engineer in Guitar Hero. Not the co-founder, but I was the head engineer.
But still,
yes.
What was the thing that pushed you to take this path instead of getting a job? What was the thing which inspired you? Maybe a person, a book, anything, anybody that pushed you to become an inventor, entrepreneur versus an employee?
Well, I always tell people I'm not a corporate guy. The politics and other aspects of a corporate life are not my thing. It doesn't say that I can't exist within a corporation, because I often do. In my career, I always worked in a big company somewhere. Mm. It is a gift to be able to. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I grew up in Europe, and this is in the 60s, before Lego was in the United States. The first time I got my hands on Lego was with my brother. We got a Lego set, and I remember building this building with him. These kinds of construction toys and experimental toys, they were here too. They had an erector set, which is another type of toy here, but that's sort of how I got my start with it. And I just love building things and making things. And I'm also a decent artist. I like to draw and paint and things like that. So the component that I probably didn't have that I got later from my education was the science and math background. Mm-hmm. As part of my wish to move forward into technology, I had to educate myself. Mm-hmm. And this was in the 70s. You would have to figure out what you're going to do with your life. I had these skills, building skills that I had, and I was pretty good at it for a teenager. Mm-hmm. I used to spend a lot of time building model airplanes and wooden flying models and things like that. That's what I like to do. Airplanes, I like aircraft and things like that. So, but I didn't have any kind of background in engineering or science, and I decided post high school that I was going to go in this direction because I saw the limitations that I had. I didn't understand the calculus and the trig and the mathematics for it. So I said, I'll just go and get an education. So I went to junior college for a couple years, and I get in there and I'm working away, and I said, this is actually pretty easy. It's not so bad. It's not, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then come time to apply to I finished the first 2 years, and I go, what am I going to do now? I'll apply to university and see if I can get into university. I apply to university, and I get into a great college at UC Berkeley and get into the EECS program. And this was in the early 80s. And 2 years into it, after all the things that I accumulated in my learning space came together and fused together in the final year of my education there. Mm-hmm. So I left UC Berkeley with a really strong background, academic background in math and science. Plus I had the art component already there. I always like to do the artwork as part of it, the creative stuff. So post-college, I start looking around. I applied to Apple. I said, I'll go try working at Apple Computer. I go in, and the interview lasted about 20 seconds, and it was Steve Jobs. Apple was kind of small back then. This was like the Apple IIe days. They didn't have the iMac was coming out, mm-hmm. which was the Macintosh, but they didn't really have a strong computing or phone business back then. It was a computer company. I go in there and interviewed it, and he just said, we can't use you. But that was the end of the interview. So I tried that, and I tried other things, and I just sort of migrated into entertainment, like artwork. And this was Doom and Quake and other games were starting to come out with improved graphics, and I was very curious and interested in those mm-hmm. things. And so I just migrated into the video game space. And I like video games, but because I did it as work, it's not like I went home and played video games at night. I was tired of them because I was playing them 8 or 10 hours a day. You can't only do so much of that. And I started doing sort of inventive things, like I wanted to invent a new way of exploring a game, like sure, you had a wing controller or something like that, or Nintendo had a rectangular controller, whatever it is. I wanted to do something different with it. So I started playing around with computer mice and keyboards and things like that. And so part of this process of doing these things, I just started inventing things on the mouse, the computer mouse. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got my start. And then I got hired at Logitech to do USB program development for them. And it just came from there, basically. And I went from entertainment company and input device companies and stuff like that, and I just stayed in that space. I did other things too, like I worked in alternative energy and environmental engineering. I worked at US Wind Power for a while, and just to try different things to see if I liked it. So a little bit of factory automation things, and I wouldn't last long there because I just didn't dig it, so. But I stayed in the video game space, and I started meeting people. And this is one of the things I want to talk about today is how important relationships are with folks, because I made an effort in my career to stay in touch with people and to always be helpful to them. And if you ask me to do something for you, like build something, I will build it. And I won't charge you for it, I'll just do it for you, because I know later on, when I need something, you'll help me. It's kind of like that. We'll take sort of a horse trade on it a little bit. So I made an effort to do that, and one of the guys I worked with, I worked on Terminator 2, the movie. I did the sound system for him, digital sound system. Mm-hmm. It was done in gate arrays, which are FPGAs. A gate array is a collection of transistors hooked together with little wires, and you have a piece of software that goes and disconnects or connects wires in different places, and in essence emulating digital logic. So it was essentially done in gate arrays, but prior to that, I simulated the entire thing in a Sun 1 workstation using C, the entire transistor level simulation of it. So that's what I did. And so as part of that ended up, it was a digital sound system done for Kodak research, ended up in Terminator 2. It was like the first on-film digital pixel recorded digital sound system. We lost market presence to Dolby because of the branding and so forth, and they're very connected. But so the guy that I worked for there, was a professor at Berkeley, hired me. I stayed in touch with him for 30 years. Every year and a half, a year, I'd call him and I'd go and meet him for lunch. And he was very influential to me. That is probably the smartest guy I've worked with. Mm-hmm. He's a very, very brilliant guy. He's done books on gaming and so forth. So I just stayed in touch with this guy, and through him, I met other people. And through the connections at working at Logitech or wherever I was working, I met other folks who were in the same sort of space. And that's how it went down. And I'm not always easy to work. I'm very insistent. If I think something has to be done a particular way, I will drive it home. But I'm generally pretty easy to work with. Not always, but mostly I made myself available and respectful to people. So that's essentially what I did. The skills part, alluding to the education, I had to get that in place first because it was not in place when I was a teenager. Like if I saw an integral symbol, like a calculus, I wouldn't know what that was. I kind of knew what it was, but not really. And then we had a computer club in high school, had a PDP-11, and there was just an old, PDP-11's an older computer. Yeah. Had one of those in there. I didn't know how they worked. I did nothing about computer math. I was very curious about it. Can it think? No, it really can't think. It doesn't think. It does what you tell it to do, kind of thing. But I didn't know any of this, so in 2001 Space Odyssey, the movie came out with HAL, and he says, maybe we could program the PDP-11 to be like HAL. It can't do that. It's not powerful. It's only at 64K or something, and it was a very low-powered machine. But I was very curious about these things, and I would just go off on my own and try to learn it if I couldn't, like it was not part of my employment contract or something. I would learn it on my own. I endeavored to learn all about AI, artificial intelligence in the 90s, and I took courses through the UC Extension, Berkeley Extension, and then studied this, and then found out that AI, all these things you hear about it these days, it's actually pretty simple. It's not all that complex stuff. It's not very complicated. It's how it's taught. So anyways, that's what I would do on my own. But that process, and I never stopped doing that. I worked constantly. Even when I got home, I would be reading at night or doing some project or soldering something or building something. Even when I was doing my regular course of employment, I would do other stuff at night and retrain myself. So I just never stopped doing that. And when I retired, after Oculus, finished Oculus, I'll get into my Oculus story a little bit. And after I finished Oculus, I continued to doing that, but I endeavored to do different kinds of things. And I opened this facility. I'm retired. I have more time. And then this facility grew, and it's partially a product. I do stuff in real estate here too, basic stuff like that. But it's just endeavored to invent things and see if I could sell them, and try different things, try different aspects of inventing and product development and engineering. So that's essentially what I've done all my whole life since I was a little kid. And I got an award when I was 9 for doing some stuff and modifying a toy.
Right, and then you received a $1,000 prize, which you never saw.
I never saw it, no. Parents probably spent it on groceries, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure I don't really even remember that. My brother remembered it, but I don't remember what went down with it. So, but that's kind of what I've done my whole life. And the other aspect that I wanted to mention that's still involved with education, I teach at UC Berkeley, is getting your hands on something is the quickest way to learn visually and actually touching things. For me, I have to get my hands on it and feel it and touch it, and or I'll make a sketch of what I want, on a piece of paper, just sketch something out. That is that's called experiential learning, and it's a very quick way to learn. And part of what I've done in retirement and with I have a foundation, it was an education foundation. We educate folks here sometimes, and it was to invest money into a public facility as part of the education system to get people more hands-on experience, and it's headquartered on campus at Berkeley.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Jacobs Institute. That's where I work.
Yeah.
Just part-time there, so I teach vehicle engineering there. Teach undergrad and grad vehicle engineering there. So, is to get people into the mode of getting more hands-on stuff. It's an interesting conversation I had with Professor Scott Moore at Berkeley 2 days ago. Was about getting the Berkeley students to get more they're smart kids. The people that go into Berkeley are sharp. They are. But get to people like the other institutions have more hands-on stuff and how to use tools and things like that. A lot of them don't lack that. And so I think that's a great cue to doing methods of teaching. And so this Jacobs Institute it's a makerspace and hands-on stuff with 3D printers, much like what I have here. I kind of copied what they did here, so it wasn't all my idea, but essentially that's what they have there. So the students can program the machines and print things and solder. And if you want to go into like product development and like work as an engineer, it's a great experience to have that particular aspect of your education. And it really helps you along. Taking things apart and putting them together. I spent a lot of time get your mom's blender and take the bottom off it and look at it and see what's in there. Wouldn't work well afterward. Or take apart a toaster just to see what's in it. Yeah. That's very useful. And then when you go into production, I've worked in production engineering also, it's like you just know how things are put together. You kind of know how that's done. So.
Yeah. That is a very interesting experience. I didn't experience putting aside and then assembling the blender, but we did Kalashnikovs.
Oh.
That was a very nice experience. And then we had to do it within 1 minute, take it apart and then put it back together.
I've taken one of those apart too. It's an interesting firearm. It's very, very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember taking one apart and there was a spring in it. It's a really weird spring at the bottom. It's the trigger spring, and I forget it also does, but yeah, I've done that. I take guns apart too. I like guns. I take them apart to look at them.
Did you think of producing any guns yourself?
I can't. I think the liability with that, and I'm not a big firearms nut, and the safety with the staff around here, I think it would be probably hard to get insurance. You have to get a license to do that, so
right.
Not really. I mean, you can buy a gun kit, like a black powder gun kit, and assemble it yourself, but not to get into the firearms business. I've done other stuff here, sort of defense stuff, like I showed you a gun that shoots drones down with radio waves, and a very powerful bright lamp that could be used to crowd control or something like that. But that's the extent of my weapons engineering and production. I just don't want to get into that. But I did take apart the Kalashnikov. I was curious to see. Yeah. It's all stamped steel parts, and the one I had looked at was a Mahdi. It was an Egyptian, but it was Russian tooling, so original tooling. So yeah, I remember that. So But I think guns are cool and fascinating, but not much of a gun person.
From your story, it feels like you had all the inspiration coming from within. There was nothing or nobody specific that would push you or inspire you to take this assembling engineering path.
Well,
is that a correct statement?
Generational thing is that you now wouldn't want to work on your own car. If you have a car, if you open the hood and look at it, it's immensely complex. Yeah. There's computers in it. There's little hoses that you don't know where they go. But back in the day, in the 70s, they weren't like that. There was a carburetor on it, and it was really simple. Yeah. There might not even be a transistor in the whole car. But in the cars now, you really can't work on them yourself. You have to. You can, and some people can. Well, you plug a computer into a port on it, an ODB2 port, and you hook a computer up to some software, and it'll tell you what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And you fix that thing. But there's no diagnosis that you can do. So a lot of young people aren't getting that stuff. Taking the car apart. My generation, if you had a car, you had to work on it yourself. My parents aren't going to fix my car for me. If your car breaks down, you have to figure it out. So that aspect of it, and then I learned how the entire vehicle was assembled and built, and how the suspension worked and so forth. So I just learned it by de facto trying to getting my car back in order.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the difference. But with a trade sort of school, and the other thing I want to talk about is about programming a little bit, because I'm a programmer too. So, but if you could have a trade school where you taught engineering students the sort of hands-on nuts and bolts part of the education coupled with the scientific part, I think that would be a great plus. So anyhow, to your point, I had a good, fortunate upbringing. My parents are not wealthy, they're not rich, and I have an older brother I learned a lot from, who's a year older, 10 months older than me, and I would see him messing around with Lego or something like that, or some project, and I would want to do it, I didn't really know what I was doing, I was too young, but so that's how I did it, and I liked mechanical things and so forth. So I got a steam engine, which is an actual live steam engine. You bought it in Europe. I saw one in Europe when I was a kid there. I go, I'm going to have one of those. That is really cool. How does it work? In high school, they don't really have that anymore. They have Lego Mindstorm, and that's fine, robotics and stuff, but that just gives you a really good grounding in how to make things. I built a table in here. I just finished it, a live edge table. And all those skills that I use on a live edge table, I learned when I was in high school in wood shop. I knew how to run the machines, do all the stuff for it. So I think that they should teach those things now. I think I don't know. I don't set the agenda for teaching and so forth in this state, but it would be good if they could teach those kinds of things again, sort of hands-on stuff. So
that is very interesting, because when I went to high school, we had those classes, and physics were taught with classes which we learned how to deal with the metal, with the wood, with assembling things, with different experiments in labs. So that was very interesting, including the cars. I still caught that period of time in Europe, in Eastern Europe, when we had those cars from the 50s, 60s, 70s, from Italy, from Czech Republic, from Soviet Union, and that was I was a little kid. I was a couple of years old, but I was hanging out with my grandfather, and for us, it was a must. It wasn't who is rich or poor, about fixing your own car, your own toilet, your own plumbing. It was about it. A man has to know how to do that.
Yeah, you're supposed to know how to do that.
Yeah. So I kind of can relate to what your story is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was telling someone the other day, it's women are attracted to, of course, if a woman's attracted to a man, it's I was thinking in my head, it's would you rather have the guy with the nice silk shirt on or the guy with a wrench in his hand who can fix your stuff? And I'm thinking probably more the guy with the wrench, the guy that can actually help you around the house and stuff like that. So, but I think that, to your point, that getting that sort of early exposure, especially to model airplanes and things like that, where I learned how to make the gas engine run and so forth, it was very helpful in my career, and that's what I spent all my time doing anyway. So, yeah.
Those were really, really, really interesting classes. Before we go to the second question, I honestly cannot withhold myself from asking you, what was your experience working on Terminator 2? We all love James Cameron. Yeah. We all love those movies.
Yeah.
what was your personal experience? How did you feel working on set with James, with everybody else?
Well, I didn't work on set with James Cameron. I met him, but I don't know him. It's just like a person I met when I was working on it. He was like, hey, how you doing? And walks off kind of thing. But I didn't know at the time where it was going. We weren't told what it was for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's that guy's an engineer. Cameron acts and thinks like an engineer. He's also a creative guy.
Yeah.
The way he does things. That's the most impressive person in Hollywood, in my view. And he's not a political guy. I don't know much about what his politics are. It's just like you don't get that out of him. You get like, and then you see the movie, the Terminator 2 movie, and it's just mind-blowingly good.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know at the time that that's what the sound system was for. We weren't told that. I was told to execute by my boss, the guy that I mentioned, that I stayed in touch with. What's interesting is I did meet Scott McNeely of Sun. Sun Microsystems used to be a company that made workstations. Now, Sun, for a lot of reasons, it's not around anymore, but they, the workstations they had, like their Spark station, were really, really good. This is the first computer graphic workstation, but I did it on a Sun 1, with the very first Sun 1. And Scott McNeely installed that Sun 1 at Kodak Research himself. It's like, that's how small Sun was back then. So anyways, I did all the work on a Sun 1 workstation, and it simulated all the gates and so forth, transistors and software. I just built like individual discrete logic blocks using transistors with transition times across gates and so forth like that, rise and fall times. And then I wired them together in software and got it working, and that's what I did. It took me 8 months and working like 12 hours a day. I loved it though.
Wow.
But later on I sort of found out, well, this is for OR Optical Radiation Corporation. They're going to use it in a film. They're going to use it in Dick Tracy, and they're going to use it in Terminator 2. I found that out there. And the Terminator 2, the sound system got an Academy Award. Not me, but the Oscar went to ORC for doing the work there. So it's essentially my boss. He did all the algorithms though, all of the complexity of the decoding scheme and stuff. He just had that in his head. And he told me what to do. He said, do this, do this. I'm like, okay. On the Sun 1, had a big trackball on it. And it was a big CRT monitor, big gray, black and white CRT, not black and white, it was a grayscale CRT monitor. But I loved that thing. After that, I wanted to get a Sun workstation, and that was PC, basically the PC stuff. So, but you can leapfrog these things forward, and when I go to the next place that I want to work, I go, well, I worked in Terminator 2. I did their sound system for them. I built the sound system and software and simulation and all that. You tell them that, and they go, really, you did that? And they go, yeah, I did that. And then that's how you kind of get the gig, And if you want to check what I'm saying, call this guy here, and they call him, and he goes, yeah, he did that. Well, yeah, come on, help us out. So, and that's kind of the way it went down, except at Apple. They didn't want me to work there. So I heard different things about Jobs. He gets kind of a bad rap. You got to give him credit for his creativity, and the iPhone, smartphones. That's because of his forward thinking. He started out with a different sort of platform. It was still a small mobile PC, but that sort of evolved into the iPhone, And actually, I don't know for sure. I'm not an iOS developer, but a lot of the stuff that was in Next Computing, their platform was in the iPhone. The software and so forth, he took that stuff that he did from Next and put it into the iPhone. So this is what I was told. I'm not an iPhone programmer. I'll qualify with that. But
you mentioned that it didn't work well to work with Apple for you.
No.
But while you were working with other companies,
I'm not bad mouthing Apple. Mike Rockwell, I know him there. Some other principal people there. They're great people. For me, this was like he didn't want to hire me. So too bad for him.
Too bad for him, that's for sure. But except of working with other companies or for other companies, which projects you were developing on your own in the beginning of your path? What were your first projects?
Well, it is my own development. I could go back 25 years, and I started working on light guns and game input devices for speeding up video games and making video games more accessible. That's what I was working on. I had the background and the experience with USB. This is in the 90s. USB was just sort of coming out. We had a spec written, and I worked on the specification. So we were still working on that. Incidentally, USB, the genesis of USB, of what it is RS-485. It's basically a differential bus that was around for years before that. Anyway, so if you think that USB is anything special, it kind of was around before, but there was no way of hooking up devices dynamically to it, like plug and play and into it. And so it's just RS-45 with the addition of being able to do some plug and play stuff. Anyways, so I had that background in the USB, and I could exploit that for my career because I would be the foremost knowledgeable person on USB at the company. I had all the tools to doing development, the bus analyzers and equipment to do the work on it, and I knew it intimately, so it was very helpful. That got my foot in the door at all kinds of companies because they didn't have the expertise around back then. Like, people had read the spec, but I was further along than anyone else probably on it, with the exception of a few other people. But so I had all this stuff, this experience, and I took that in to the game companies, and it was just a brilliant fit for me. And so that really accelerated my career because we were all heading in that direction. You know, the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo had a proprietary computer interface for plugging the controller in. PlayStation 2 has something called SPI, and Nintendo had, GameCube had something else called I2C. They're two different platforms, but they're kind of already around before they got to it. But that's all they had. But USB was new, and so Xbox One, the very first Xbox, was USB. It didn't look like a USB plug, but it was USB. So I had all this background and experience, and it was just a natural fit to go to a place like Microsoft and develop peripherals for them because it was just easy. I had reversed all of their controllers for every platform. I built a bus analyzer to monitor bus traffic on a PC, watch it go across, and I could reverse the protocol. So I had the chips programmed, and I went around trying to sell the chips to people like, hey, I've got a game controller chip that's compatible with the Sony PS2. Exactly compatible. The protocol, I've done all of that stuff. And that's a great pitch because they don't have to pay someone to learn that, and I got it already working. So I could take that and migrate it into different peripherals, like Guitar Hero peripherals. I already had that stuff down cold. So that's kind of the fit, and I would just branch out from there, getting different companies. A lot of smaller, there's a company called Mad Cats I worked at, and some other companies, Pelican Accessories and so forth. Fire International, I'll go on and on. Joytech, I worked for all these companies, supplying them with integrated circuits and chips to build their products and selling it to them. So that's what I did, and I just, from my background in reverse engineering it, I had all the protocols and all the intellectual property nailed, and they didn't have to pay for it. They wouldn't want to pay for that anyway, so, so that's how I did it. The guy this is a workspace here. It's an office, and I had a startup company in here. It wasn't my startup company, it's my friend's. I consider him a friend. He came to me and asked me for a place to be. I said, okay, you can stay here for free. Just cover my electric bill or something like that. Not for free exactly, but he doesn't pay rent, because he helped me. Well, he turned around and sold his business. This startup company that was in here, it was a gaming startup, he turned around and sold it. And he asked me to help him out financially. I wrote him a check, like no questions asked, just cut a check. You know, when he sold the business, I did pretty well by that. But that's like, when he gave so much to me, I'm gonna give it back to him and help him. When he comes to me for help, he'll be there. And that's pays off very well. That's a very good thing an asset thing. The other thing is, when you're working somewhere and it's not working out and you hate it, the worst thing you can do is like express that. Yeah. What you do is you keep your mouth shut and you finish your job. You tell them, I'm leaving, I'm gonna finish all my work. And you say, thank you much for your check. I'll see you around. And then later on, they call you back. Like, they need help with something. They're gonna remember that. So I made a habit of trying not to lose my cool when things weren't going the way I thought they should go. And so that's also useful. I didn't have a rap for like being temperamental. I could be. I didn't have that rap. So, and this Oculus, fast forward, to 2012, this guy, Greg Deutsch at Activision, calls me, and Greg is the IP guy at Activision, the guy I worked with for patents on Guitar Hero. I sold some patents for him in Inventor, so I'd write patents and sold those. To the Activision, calls me and goes, hey man, there's a guy coming to meet you, he wants to show you something. And I get this people coming in with gadgets and stuff. Like yesterday we had a guy here with a gadget, and I look at it. So he brings us in, and it's this black thing, and it looks like a snorkel mask, and I go, what is that? So he comes in and he goes, you gotta see this. His name's Brendan. And so, okay, I'll take a look at it. I put it on, I go, man, that's really cool. because he had it on an Apple laptop running boot camp. I put it on, and I said, that's cool, but what do you want, what do you need me for? He goes, well, we need someone to build this for us. You think you could help us? And I go, okay. And he told me there's this guy named Palmer, and Palmer, I'll bring Palmer by, and Palmer comes by, and Palmer's a kid, he's a teenager, but he's a likable kid. I like the kid. I like Palmer. So I go, okay, I'll help you guys out. That's sort of the thing that founded. That relationship with Greg is because I worked with Greg, and I was easy to work with, I think. But I worked with a dude, and he remembered me, because I'm a hardware engineer, and there's not too many hardware engineers in gaming, mostly programmers. So that's how it sort of played out. And I didn't know what was going to happen with it. I had negative opinions of it as a gaming platform. I work in that business. I still have negative opinions of it. I do. I mean, I think, what I think is great? What came out of Oculus, the best product I've seen, is the Ray-Ban stories, the Facebook stories, those glasses. Mm-hmm. I was going to bring them and run them for you, but that's a great product. I loved Google Glass. I thought Google Glass was a really brilliant idea. Poorly pitched by a new company that doesn't know how to sell hardware and pitch things. They bungled the messaging, Google did on that. And then in comes Facebook, the Ray-Ban stories, and that is a phone-connected glasses, and you listen to music, and you take pictures with it, and so forth. I think it's a great product, and it's selling well, and it's a great price point. So, back to the point I'm getting to is here, the platform part of it is tough with VR, and the games, I don't like the games that are in VR. I don't like Beat Saber and those other games. You've got to get people in and engaged for 10 hours, and you can't wear it for 10 hours. Mm-hmm. In order to get revenue from the game and buying components of the game, you've got to get people engaged and running the game and being involved in the platform. It's not the type of thing. It's a fascinating visual experience to put on VR goggles, and the Quest is great. It's a really good piece of hardware. The workmanship on that is just really good. But I personally don't feel that that's the way gaming is headed. Gaming is headed in the mobile space. This thing here has the power of a PS3. Mm-hmm. My iPhone has the same GPU, same render rate, everything as a PS3. You can play it on a phone. Mm-hmm. You can play a decent game, and you can get people playing and engaged for hours and hours. And so that is what it needs. And this doesn't require anything special. You just have to hold it in your hands. You don't have to put goggles on to play it. It's there with you constantly, ready for you to play. And that's just not what VR is. And other people have different opinions on it. That's just my opinion. So Oculus, I meet this guy Palmer, and we're working with Palmer, and they shot it. I wasn't familiar with Kickstarter. I'm just an Inventor guy. I don't know about Kickstarter and social media too much, a little bit, and they filmed the Kickstarter video here, and I'm looking at the team, and I'm going, they're awful young, man, you're too old for them, and they're young, they know about things you don't know about, though, and I like them, the guys, mostly like them, they're good guys. So the Kickstarter video comes out, and I go, oh, that's like a super professional production. A production crew showed up here, like with all the stuff you'd expect for shooting a movie. That's who shot it. And I go to Nate. I go, hey man, who did all the directing on that and the organization? Because it's really, really good. And he goes, oh, I did. And I didn't believe him. Mm-hmm. And now I know it's true. He was a brilliant kid, all of them. Mike and Nate and Brendan and Palmer. Those guys are really, really good. It was just a confluence of things. Brendan's ability to sell that stuff and read people is uncanny. Mm-hmm. Engineers aren't known for reading people well. They're usually not very good at that kind of thing. They can program and stuff, but they're not known for that. But he is. He's an engineer, and his ability to read you and change his pitch is what sold the business to Facebook. He did that. Mm-hmm. It was him, and he's also a great guy. I liked everyone for the most part that was in the original founding team. I had difficulties with some other folks, but it's just the way it goes. But generally, the team that founded the company and got it up and running, they're really, really good folks, and I still stay in touch with them. I don't work anymore, so it's not necessary for me to chase down things and contacts and stuff. But I do hear from him occasionally. Brendan's running a Le Mans team or something like that. He's done pretty well for himself. So, yeah, it was a good experience. What will Facebook do with it? They're not a hardware company. They're trying to be. I think they should stick with stuff like Ray-Ban Stories. That's where I'd head. Just some small thing that's an addendum to their Facebook platform, and Meta, yeah, it's an interesting idea. So I think that's a really good idea that Mark Zuckerberg has to do Meta. I think that realizing that it's an entire world inside of a computer.
Yeah.
You can get a job inside of Meta with real income, and they have their own currency. You can order food from a restaurant in Meta. It's real food that comes to your door, but
yeah.
that's a really cool idea. I spend a lot of time on Facebook too. I spend more time on Facebook than I do on the web because I want to, my family's there and stuff. So it's a good idea. Can they execute? As long as they're not doing too much hardware, I think that they'll execute fine. And if they're going to build it around Oculus, I'm not sure that will work very well. They should focus on making it run on a mobile device, and so that you have it there with you all the time. And so I think Mark Zuckerberg is taking cues from what's happened with games like Roblox, which is immensely popular with kids. It's a kids game, and how much time kids spend in that. They spend a lot of time. It's a better game than Minecraft. It's a much better game. It's got its own programming language, Luna, and all this stuff.
Since you already mentioned Oculus,
yeah,
and you mentioned how it all began when you were shown this little device, and then I assume you accepted the invitation to become one of the members of the co-founders. Which milestones did you have to go through? You mentioned that you started a Kickstarter campaign, I believe, to get initial funding. Which steps did you have to go through after the Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah. Well, here was the difficulty that we had, and this is something that I recognized early on, is that I didn't think that I would be able to sell a 10,000 piece complicated piece of hardware to manufacture to a contract manufacturer. I didn't think I could sell it, but I thought Brendan could sell it. So Brendan and I got on an airplane. We went to a contract manufacturer, a friend of mine, and pitched it. And she said no. That was my chance. And so we had to juice it up a little bit. And I have a good personal relationship with her. I brought Guitar Hero. Myself and other people brought Guitar Hero in there. So she had revenue from that. I brought the active game that I built for EA in there. So I had a good track record with her. And she knows that I would not bring something in there. I'm experienced enough that waste everyone's time. But we had to pay her, so we had to pay her up front. Cut the check, bring the checkbook out and cut a huge check. The traction we got off of it was shocking. I mean, we were going to build. We sold 10,000 on Kickstarter. On the eStore, we sold an additional 60,000. So to me, that said, well, there's not much of an app for it. There's no, you can look at a sunken ship and the fish swim by. No big deal, right? But it does have some traction, and mostly due to the PR. So Brennan goes with me, and he did the pitch to this person. It's a woman. She runs a big contract manufacturing company there. And she thinks about it. We paid her up front, so they decided to build it. But we had 90 days to get it done because they set this benchmark for delivery in 90 days. Kickstarter, you don't get paid until you deliver, so we don't get revenue coming in until the end of 90 days. And we had no terms. And terms means you negotiate like when you get paid after it ships. Apple, it's net 45. So after it ships and it's in the stores and it's sold, then you pay them. But we don't have such luxury. We have to pay right as soon as they put it in the shipping container. We have to cut a check. This was the challenge in any hardware company, is the cost and so forth. So to my surprise, we sold many more in the DK1, and DK2 we sold about 150,000. So it's got some teeth. We were actually Oculus was actually making money. That's the only hardware startup that I've ever worked for that made money. In the first 6 months, we were making money. We were in the black. Like, we had more revenue coming in. With DK2, it was a more expensive build, so we were sold at cost. But the idea was the content component would be made up, and kind of a faulty assumption, but DK2 was sold basically at what it cost us to build it, which is about $350, something like that. and 150,000. So, but now we're burning cash like crazy. Like, we're burning millions and millions of dollars. We've got this huge game studio in Irvine in a high rise, a really beautiful, all murals everywhere, a little bit like this place. And I'm looking at that and going, you know, what are we going to do when we burn through the 100 mil we got, you know? And then so, you know, like Mark Zuckerberg's showing up. I go, what the hell is that guy interested in Oculus for? Oh, why would he be interested in that? And Brendan again, like, pitched it and sold it, like, to the guy, to Mark Zuckerberg of all people. So what happened after that is everyone had to go to Menlo Park to work, and I don't want to work at Facebook. I don't know what I would do there. I think that's like the oldest person at Facebook. So I didn't want to do that. So I went and told Brendan, I said, I'm not going. I'm not going to go there. What am I going to do there? And so what he did, he went and said, let me talk to them. He came back to me and goes, okay, you can leave. Here's you get everything you didn't lose anything. Normally when you have a deal like that, you have to stay there for 4 or 5 years to get your earn out. But he let me leave early. Maybe he wanted me to leave, I don't know, but I got what I wanted out of it. So, and I called my wife at the time and I said, hey, guess what? And she goes, what? And I said, Oculus got sold to Facebook. He goes, oh, really? That's interesting. I said, yeah. And she goes, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to split. Like, I'm not going to stay there, you know. But I didn't. I kind of stuck around for a while. But it wasn't an option for me to go to Facebook. I just don't think I would fit in there, you know. I walk in the place and there's like beanbag chairs on the ground, and I just know where I come from, man. It's like, where's the computer room? Like, where's the QA and all that stuff? And I'm like, it's not a game studio. You know, where are the artists? There's no artist here. You know, it's a social media company, right?
Yeah, different environment.
Good fit. Yeah, I like being in the studio, in a studio like Neversoft or EA Burnaby. That's where I like to be. A corporate office, not so much. You know, it's just that kind of a poor fit. So that's how Oculus went down. Had it not been purchased, would they still be in business? No, they would have bankrupt. There's no way. Now, we didn't have any apps for it. There was one company, it was a Russian company actually making an app, and but that's about it. We didn't have the strong application enthusiasm for it. It's very expensive to write a game. It's very time consuming and expensive to write a AAA game, like Grand Theft Auto or something like that. That's just enormously pricey. So it just was not going to happen that way. That's the way I saw it. I've been involved in things where you're working with like a big company like EA, and you have launched something before and it did really well, and you want to launch a new version of it, and you put a little bit of hardware at a higher cost, and it flops. I've seen that happen. So I think, you know, in the case of Oculus, it's just too high of cost to the company. And I think we burned through 90 mil in a year, like something like that, year and a half. We burned, it was gone. It's a lot of dough to burn through. So that's kind of like what we were faced with. I thought that if this deal with Facebook did not go through, that would be in trouble, you know, and I'd be, you know, back doing what I always did, doing something else. So lo and behold, it worked out, again, due to the talents of Brendan primarily. And Brendan Uribe and his just a talent. He just had like 3 exits. The guy's like, he was 30. It's like, how did you do 3 exits? No, I was 33 or something like that. He had Scaleform and then another company. What was it? It was Gaikai Entertainment. He was a VP there. That egg sold to Sony, and then this. So this is, you know, he's like a string of successes like that. That's what you look for. Not necessarily in the case, but you got to find an exec team that's got like a player on it, like who's connected and stuff. They're very helpful, and you know, and we had that with him. And I didn't really know him. He was there in game tools and platform tools. I didn't work there. Scripting tools, and not scripting tools, but they did menu systems and things like that for games, and licensed it. So that's not what I did. So I never really ran into him before. So, and there he was in Maryland. I'm out here, California. So, but it was a good company to work for. Back to what I was saying about staying connected. The guy who I worked with, not the fellow that was up in this facility, but another guy, Charles Huang, and Charles and Kai are the founders of Guitar Hero. I'm not the founder of Guitar Hero, I'm a hired gun, essentially, a designer. Those two guys I stayed in touch with. Now Charles is a great guy. Charles got me a gig as a trustee at the university. I mean, how's that work? Like, just by staying in touch with him, you know. And then you have difficulties with people you work with, like, but you can get your head around that. You know, later on, maybe you didn't get along with them very well working with them, but later on you did get along with them. Like, you can get your head around that kind of stuff. It's personality weirdness stuff, you know. But that's the importance of staying connected. And whenever I see Charles, I ask him about his wife, you know, Lily, and I go, hey man, how's the, you know, whatever. I just chat with him, see how he's doing, and so it pays off. And I'm not, it's not like I'm doing this to intentionally get something out of it. It's just, that's what you're supposed to do, I guess, you know, so.
Yeah,
but
just
it
like
paid
networking.
off. Yeah. And the case of Greg Deutsch at Activision turning Brendan on to me about hardware manufacturing and stuff and design was a relationship with I had with Greg, which was pretty good. You know, I like Greg, you know, so that's kind of how it goes.
So basically from your story, I mean, I'm trying to make a conclusion that you had only one offer from Facebook. There were no offers from other companies.
Well, I was 60 years old, pushing 60. Was that true? Well, not really, but close to it. And I'm looking at I've done well for myself. I mean, I earned a commission on Guitar Hero sales. I did well at Activision. They didn't like that, but I did. And I'm doing pretty well. And why do I want to go back into the cauldron? I want to spend more time with my family or whatever it is. I want to do that because, you know, I'm getting older and I can retire now. Why not just retire? And then it's not like I actually retired because I started teaching and stuff. That's a lot of work. Being a teacher is a lot of work.
It is.
That I found out is they're underpaid because a lot of the technical people who are teaching are highly smart and highly educated, and they could go get a job at anywhere just about, you know, yet they're teaching. And it is more than 40 hours a week for a class. You have to do prep and everything. So I'm finding this out. So I got this gig teaching, and I'm going, oh man, this is a lot of work. I have to do all this PowerPoints and all this stuff, and I have to know what I'm talking about. So that ended up finding out that, you know, being retired was not really being retired. And then I got this place going on, and I own a winery, and I own a little resort, and some other stuff so I'm pretty busy. So, but at least I'm not at Facebook. Yeah.
Makes sense. So you just took the first offer, which basically came to the table from Facebook.
What I did was I went to Brendan and I said, I'm an older guy. I don't think it's a good fit for me. And yet I know I have a 5-year holdover contract, which says I have to stay there 5 years to get my earnout, my pay. Because I got paid in stock. I didn't really get much of a salary. It was like minimal. You go to a startup, you're not going to get 200 grand, 250 grand a year as a salary for starting engineer. You're not going to get that. Yeah. You might get that at Apple. Startup, you're going to get stock. Get the stock, people. Stock. That's what I did. So I had that, but I had to figure out how to get Brendan to release me. And so he just did it. He did it for me. He said, you can go. Good. I was done, and then I started working on cars and other things that I do here, building cars, which I enjoy doing. So.
Yeah, that was very impressive when you took the engine from the motorcycle. You
put it in the car.
Yeah,
it's impressive, but it's moving like a glacier. It's not moving fast enough for me, but it's moving. So we had to completely redesign the entire vehicle dynamics, the suspension, the springs, the wheels. We've made the wheels, the brakes, everything we had to make because nothing fits in that car. It's tiny.
Mr. McCauley, you've been in the Silicon Valley, in the heart of business and the development of the whole world for some time. How did this area, this environment changed since the 80s, when I believe you graduated from the Berkeley, you started working, and then till today? How did it change for you in your eyes?
Yeah. Well, the Silicon Valley is not known for video game stuff. There's a couple companies, but there's no studios here per se. Now, EA is headquartered close to the Silicon Valley, but it's the accounting, the management, the bookkeeping. So this is like the business end of it maybe here, but the studios are elsewhere. So I worked in the studios, LA. There's a studio in London, a studio in New York. I worked in studios. To your question, when I was a kid growing up here, one of the main thoroughfares that goes into the Silicon Valley was a 2-lane road. And it is not a 2-lane road anymore. They've widened it over time. There was a General Motors car plant there, which is now Tesla. Mm-hmm. Tesla's plant is in Fremont. That used to be General Motors and then Toyota. That was there. And then in the early 80s, late 70s, we had Intel. They had a fab facility there and a few others. Apple Computer was in the Silicon Valley, San Jose. They actually had the production line there set up in San Jose. I know a guy I used to know supplied them with power supplies for their 2E. So that was here, but it was a lot of orchards down there. It was fruit orchards, like apricot orchards and things like that, farms. It was just a flat area with farms and stuff. So over time, of course, that is not true. It used to actually be cheap to live in San Jose too. It was more expensive to live, not necessarily here, but in Berkeley or San Francisco than it was San Jose. It's considered a bargain. I don't think it's a bargain to live there anymore. It's very expensive there. But so that's what was there, and now it's a lot of companies are headquartered there, and they've moved up the peninsula. Menlo Park, Facebook, mm-hmm. Google is in Mountain View, more or less in Mountain View at the end of 237 there. So that is where they're there. The reason they're here is because the talent pool. If you quit at a company and you go to work at another company, you're going to take everything you learned from that other company to the new company. Mm-hmm. And that's a benefit to the company. So the talent is here. And there's a lot of foreign workers here, a lot of foreign engineers here. The United States cannot produce enough engineers to meet the demand in the United States. We can't educate and produce enough people to meet the demand. So we have to bring people in from the outside. That's fine. A lot of people who are born in India, Ukraine, China, other places are working here because we don't have enough people. So I never had a problem finding a job. It was easy. Like you could find a job in like 2 days. So, mm-hmm. But it has changed, and it is a different environment. I was unaware what people got paid. Even when I was working at Oculus, I have no idea whose salary is what. I don't know. I knew what I was getting paid. It was terrible, but it was okay. I took the stock. So now I realize people are getting very highly paid down there, like $300,000-$400,000, unheard of. When I got out of school, I was making $28,000. That was my salary, mm-hmm. with no stock options. That's what they were paying people. Next step, I stepped it up a bit, but so it's just very different now. And I don't understand how you can stay in business having a large staff like that with that salary load and the drain that is on the company's finances. It must be tough, but that's what they're doing. I'm sure Google's got plenty of money. Facebook is like, you watch their earnings reports, they just blow it out of the water, except last time, but they just like smoked it every time. So I still have a lot of Facebook stock. I just kept it. I'm just going to hang on to it, so donated. I donate a lot of money to charity and stuff like that, so I like to do that. So
that's very kind of you. Within the time that the area and the environment here was changing towards more of a business and technology, I believe, and also you mentioned the pitch, which your colleague did very successfully. The approach to pitching your ideas, to pitching your projects to the VCs or to any other financiers might have been also changed a little bit. To a person or like to younger people who are coming here with their ideas, with their startups, how would you advise them to develop their pitch, their project, their package, the pitch package, in order to be successful in front of the VCs?
Well, if you're going to do a hardware company a pitch, it's very tough to get the investor. It's very expensive. I mean, if it's a software thing, like let's say AI or whatever, that's the hot stuff right now, Bitcoin or whatever, crypto, if you're going to do that kind of a pitch, it's an easier sell. If I were doing this, even though I'm a hardware engineer, I would create a software product, not a product per se, but an algorithm or something of that nature to sell to a bigger company. Like find out what their deficit is, like what do they need, and then develop that and then try to sell that to them. That's what I would do. That's an easier thing than going to a VC and getting funding and so forth. The reason we got funding at Oculus, it was a hardware company, was we put our own skin in the game. I invested, Brendan invested, Nathan Palmer didn't have anything, Mike invested. We put our own money into it to show the VCs that you had skin in the game. Like, we believe in this. Mm-hmm. If you're young, you probably don't have a lot of resources like that, but I did, and Brendan did, and Mike did. Mike and Brendan worked at scale for them. They sold the business, so we kind of had that skin in the game. They would like to see that. But I think to your question about what the pitch is, I would get on your board, if you're going to do a pitch, people who are experienced and seasoned, and have them as part of your board members or team, advisors, and so forth. Mm-hmm. They want to see that, people who have succeeded in the past, who know what they're doing. So if you're going to build a startup company, go find a board member and find some board members and get them engaged and put them on the pitch deck. That's what I would do. Mm-hmm. And they had me and they had Brendan and on this thing, and we had a lot of people who were very enthusiastic about VR, mm-hmm. the people at Valve and so forth. So that helped us, I think. You know, they don't want to see someone coming in there with a smartwatch. You know, with 4 people on the team that, you know, the developers are fresh out of school. They don't want to see that. They want to see like some substance there. Mm-hmm. So
with some experience, with some accomplishments.
Yeah.
For people who are developing their businesses as startups, what blueprint would you advise them to follow? Let's say if they're coming to the Silicon Valley, do they need to start working with an incubator, or they start with an office, the business plan? How would you, if you would become an advisor, mm-hmm. right, for this, mm-hmm. right, like a startup, right?
Yeah.
What would you advise them to do theoretically? Again,
yeah.
It's not hardware or software, it's just in general.
If you're coming straight out of college, I would go get a job at a Fortune 500 company and work as a programmer and learn your trade and skill set. Mm-hmm. On the side, you can work on your other stuff, but get your experience first. The odds of you doing well right out of college without any kind of technical experience probably aren't very good. And I think a VC can see that, like, oh, here we go, another bunch of kids with, you know, something. So that's what I would do. I think the Kickstarter thing actually worked well for Oculus. All the PR we got out of it, I mean, it was like pure PR for free, mm-hmm. and very helpful. And we had like the company called Ouya that was out there about the same time, and they didn't make it, but it just was great help. Get your PR out there first. Oh, here's these group of people, and you know they're doing this, and then spin that on social media or somehow get your PR team doing mm-hmm. that, so the word gets out a little bit. And then when they meet you, they kind of have a feel for what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. But not all the pitches I've been to have been successful. Some of them lasted 15 minutes, and that was it. You know, it's like, okay, see you guys later. Even when other people are standing there, we did a pitch to. There's a VC company here about 3 miles from here. We did a pitch. I went into the meeting with them, this other guy, and it didn't last. It was just like, it was a piece of hardware, and they just don't do that. It's just not their thing, you know. So they software company or real estate app transaction apps and things like that they're into. You know, that's what they know. It's a little out of their realm what they're pitching, but very tough. As far as advice, I would try to get an advisor on your board, and some faces there that are recognizable, that you got buy-in from them, and then stay away from hardware. Really, it's too hard. It's too difficult to get funding for it. Mm-hmm. And in our case at Oculus, here's an interesting story with Guitar Hero. Right, the company is Charles and Kai Huang, and about 25 people. It's a video game rental business. They decide to publish a video game. Mm-hmm. Crazy, right? They did a lot of things right, but it's a tremendously expensive piece of hardware. I think even at $8, you're looking at $8 landed cost of a plastic guitar, and then you've got the game. You got to pay royalties and stuff. And then margins are getting squeezed there. We could not find a buyer for Guitar Hero for the concept. And finally, Activision, Bobby Kotick at Activision bought it, because he's a hardware guy. He's a hardware company. Activision made game cartridges. They don't do that anymore, but they bought into it and bought it. And I'm sure EA is regretting not doing that at 64 million unit, $2 billion franchise, you know, in 4 years. So I think that, you know, I would stay away from hardware and do the software stuff. But in that case, people didn't recognize at the time. They're so afraid of hardware that they didn't, you know, they couldn't get their head around the $8 thing, you know, like $9, $10, whatever it is. Games sold for $90 and sold really well for $90. So, but they couldn't get, a lot of execs couldn't get their head around that. A lot of it is like, some execs are just looking out for themselves. You know, how's it going to affect my career if this doesn't work? It's going to make me look bad. That's still totally the wrong. Nothing's going to happen to you if you make a bad decision. Maybe you get, you know, I don't know, don't get your Christmas present. I would rather see people who are willing to take chances, you know, than people who are only worried about themselves. And I run into that. And those people, it's like, why are you in this position? You know, why don't you just do something safer? You know, like, I don't know what you want. You could be the VP of onboarding or whatever you want to do. In that case, I think that part of that was played out a little bit. It's like, who wants to take a risk? And you know, like Elon Musk probably would have taken a risk like that, but not a lot of people will. You know, so that's kind of the way it goes, though. If you're working in a big company like that, as you know, kind of looking out for the first person, right? So
yeah. And if you were an advisor on a startup, would you recommend them, or would you not recommend them to start working with an incubator, and why?
You mean an incubator, which is a collective of startups in a place, in a space? Sure. You have to trade an asset to get that space, though, a piece of the company, right? And if I were a startup, if I were a VC person, I go, why are you giving away a part of your company to this incubator here? What are they doing for you? Why don't you just get your own office, you know? So the value of incubators, of course, is to provide an immediate workspace and collaborative area with internet and all that stuff, but you have to give away something for it to be there, right? A portion of the company somehow, right? So I don't know that incubators have been that successful. You know, we know friends that have done this, and I don't know that it's been that successful for them.
Let's say a company, a few founders, right? They have no assets at the moment. How would you advise them to research these incubators, and maybe you know a few which are actually efficient, and you would advise people to work with them?
Honestly, I haven't looked into the incubator world in a while. I know there were some in San Francisco and PCH, others have come and gone, but I haven't looked into that world in a while. But I may be wrong on that, but it seems to me you could set that up at your home. If you don't have a place to go, you guys could move your furniture out of one room. That's what I would do. Move everything into someone's apartment, you know, being thrifty. So an incubator, here might be the real benefit of an incubator. If you're in an incubator and it's a good one, let's say it's a productive one, you may have the attention of a VC. Like, it's an easy place to come in to meet people versus someone's apartment.
Yeah.
You know, or introductions, like the group of people sitting there, one of those guys in that other group, not affiliated with your little startup co, knows someone. That would be a big benefit. But I think the real benefit would be just getting a really good advisory team on board and give them some options or something like that, or a piece of it, or ask to invest, something like that. If you ask them to, an advisor. If you have an advisor like puts skin in the game, that's very helpful. You know, if this advisor understands the concepts and products. Let me ask you a question. If 10 years ago, if I had come to you and I'd said, I have an electric vehicle startup company, would you like to invest? You're going to say, no way, man, because knowing what you know now, you probably would invest, right? But who would have invested in Tesla 10, 15 years ago? I didn't. When I saw that, I said, that is crazy, because you're going to get beaten up by Volkswagen or whoever, Volkswagen or Audi and Porsche and, you know, whoever it is, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, someone's going to come up and just kick them in the butt. It hadn't happened yet, though, has it? It's interesting. That's a testament to that guy's leadership, even though I think he's a little wacko, but a little crazy. But
a few times you mentioned that you would advise startups to get an advisor for a particular field or like piece of work. how or where would you advise people to look for these advisors, being new in the area?
If you were new here, I could try LinkedIn. I get stuff on LinkedIn all the time. I can't read it all. It's too much to read, but I get hits on stuff like that. If you've got a contact with them, buy them lunch, buy the advisor, I'll buy you a lunch, I want to talk to you about what I'm doing. I'll bring in DoorDash or whatever it is. This guy who just went to Facebook from DoorDash, but just do something like that, and then pitch your idea to it. Like, we're looking for an advisor, and here's what we can give you some stock options, but we need you to sit on the board and provide us with advice and introductions. That's what you do. And LinkedIn may work, the guy may not respond, the person may not respond. Most of the time, those people of that caliber are very busy. They have a lot of stuff going on, and you may say something to them, and they completely forget about it. Forgot you talked to them. Like I do that. Like I forget I talked to the guy, but I did. So that's what I would advise them to do. And let me just back up a little bit on the incubator thing. That may be a good place to meet advisors. As far as the hardcore part of developing the product, you probably not, could do that in your house, or rent some space somewhere like this place. We rented it out to a startup here just recently, so that's what I would do in terms of trying to find advisors. They're out there. If they like you and you pitch well and you give them a piece of the action, it may be worthwhile to you to do that. They may even invest, so that could be the case.
Before connecting with them on LinkedIn or any other platforms, how would people find the names of people who are actually interested in this field? Right, because you mentioned to me that you were pitching an idea to a VC company, but they're just not into that. Right.
Here's one way that would be a shortcut, is to go and Google who's teaching what where. A professor at some university like Berkeley, and say, I want to sit down with you and talk to you. This is my idea about this. Can I buy you a sandwich? And they go meet them there, and then tell them what you're trying to do. They're often pretty connected. The professors actually, some of them are. They know a lot of people. They may be able to get you hooked up with someone. I know this guy that he's not working, he's not teaching right now, and go talk to this guy, and then you reach out to that guy. So that's what that seems like that would work to me. A lot of academics also do like side gigs, like they like to get their feet in stuff, doing things. So,
Mr. McCauley, what are your development plans for the next, let's say, 5 years? What projects do you plan to implement? I know you told me that you're working at the same time on a couple of different things, but do you have a plan for the next 5 years of your own project development?
Well, I was working in defense and stuff like that, and drone stuff. I'm not really doing that anymore. I decided to get away from that sort of negative. It's just a negative thing. I don't need to get involved with that. But working on cars, I like building cars. Now I'm focused on the wine business, winery. So how to run the wine. I know nothing about wine, and I don't even like it. I don't like the taste of wine. But I'm focused on that. I have a resort. I'm doing stuff with that and getting that up and running, and sort of doing those hobby things. For the development, I've mentioned I'm working on the RF stuff, and I haven't since November, but I'm going to get back on that, and doing long-range communications outside of the internet, and so that's what I'm working on right now.
Mr. McCauley, thank you so much for your time for the interview. The last question: your 5 tips of success to the upcoming entrepreneurs and inventors.
Maintain contact with people and maintain a good relationship. When you go to a company, stay there 5 years, minimum 5 years. Don't leave after 6 months unless they go out of business. Reach out and help your colleagues if they need help. That's another thing. Of course, being honest that's good. And if you want to get rich, you can get rich in the Silicon Valley. You can. Take it from me. So if you want to go to a startup company and do something like that, don't give up on the first try. If it doesn't work out, keep going. And that's what I did. I didn't tell you that I had a camera startup that failed, just like 5 or 6 years ago. Just came and went. So don't give up, and I didn't. I think part of that is perseverance. The other part is just being a little bit stubborn, and wanting to succeed. So, so those are the 5 tips.
Thank you so much for your time, for all your advices, and I'll be looking forward to our next meeting, hopefully at your winery.
Sure.
And that will be another exciting story of another part of your life.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.